woke up quick at about noon.
Leans over on the dribble, works right, bounces off him in the lane, got it again! Kawhi Leonard is shaking him down. He's got the last 10 for Toronto, 103-97, and down the stretch we come.
Warriors not going without a fight. Iguodala takes a handoff for Draymond to Curry. Curry takes a three, it's up and good! Curry has tied the game at 103 with 119 to go.
Calls from both the Raptors and Warriors radio network get us started here on this Tuesday, June 11th edition of the podcast with Damian Barling. I am Damian Barling, and I thank you so much for subscribing, for downloading, and for streaming. However you are listening here today, I greatly appreciate it. There is so much to get to. There were a number of ways that we could have started today's broadcast. We could be talking about Kevin Durant's heroic performance, heroic return. The Golden State Warriors survive. We push a Game 6 on Thursday night. We could have been talking about the Toronto Raptors winning their first ever NBA championship last night. Unfortunately, the story coming out of last night's game is the return of Kevin Durant and the subsequent injury that followed. All signs are pointing to a torn Achilles tendon. Nothing has been confirmed, though I think when it was announced that Golden State Warriors general manager Bob Myers was going to speak at the podium last night, I think when we saw Steve Kerr's reaction following an incredible one-point victory, when we saw his demeanor at the press conference, I think it started to be clear that what was labeled during the broadcast as an Achilles injury is actually the Achilles injury that all athletes fear, that even I think just fans of the sport fear, and that's an Achilles tear, as both Ramona Shelburne and Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN later reported. Warriors sources were saying the belief is it's a torn Achilles, and if someone is saying that, it almost certainly is. An Achilles tear is real easy to diagnose. The one thing that gave me hope last night is when they were labeling it an Achilles injury and not an Achilles tear, was that perhaps it was some sort of strain, perhaps even at worst it was some sort of partial tear. Now, this wasn't in hopes of Kevin Durant returning for Game 6 or Game 7, and we'll get to whether Kevin Durant should even have been out there in Game 5 as the day rolls along, but now we're talking about Kevin Durant missing an entire season. The Achilles rehab is the longest rehab in all of sports, at least that I'm aware of. It is pretty much a full year of activity. It is a very slow, grueling process that these professional athletes have to go through. It's a slow, grueling process that anyone, regardless of the walk of life, has to go through, regardless of what you do for a living. It is a long and grueling rehab. And the one thing that gave me hope is they kept labeling it as an Achilles injury. With an Achilles tear, you know right away. You don't need MRIs. You don't need x-rays. Doctors can simply pinch the area in which the tendon connects to the foot. And if the tendon is not there, you tore it. Watching Kevin Durant walk off the court led me to believe, well, he's putting a whole lot of weight on it. When you look at when DeMarcus Cousins tore his Achilles, when you look at when Rudy Gay tore his Achilles, you can even go back to when Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles. He was moving so gingerly and in such a way that you felt, okay, it's pretty clear what happened here. Kevin Durant reacted very similarly to the way that he reacted during the initial calf strain back on May 8th. And I had some hope that maybe he didn't tear his Achilles. Maybe it's just an injury. He's going to have to rehab through the offseason. Nothing's going to change the approach to July 1st. Nothing's going to change the approach to the offseason for Kevin Durant, Kevin Durant's team, and for all the teams that are going to be pursuing Kevin Durant. But all that has changed, as the belief is, and if it's being reported by both Woj and by Ramona Shelburne, it came from someone within the organization. And again, you don't need an MRI to determine whether an Achilles is torn. It's either there or it's not. Clearly, with someone with knowledge of the situation knows that Achilles, it's not there, it's torn. And Kevin Durant's going to be going through a long, lengthy rehab, just 3 weeks away from the most anticipated free agent class in the last 9 years. We'll get to Kevin Durant's injury. We'll talk about the ramifications of it. And quite honestly, General Manager Bob Myers is right. We want to blame somebody. Now, I admire him for sitting at the podium saying, well, if you're going to blame somebody, you got to blame me. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but we'll get to the conversation regarding Kevin Durant's injury. And if we've got to blame somebody, we'll determine who to blame is. But we'll start with the game because there are plenty of talking points coming out of the actual basketball game as well. I don't think the Warriors could have played worse. There was a stretch there where Steph and Klay were missing big shot after big shot after big shot. The Toronto Raptors had a chance to not only win that game last night, they had a chance to run away with it. All of those shots you expect to fall from the Golden State Warriors weren't falling. All of those moments where, the Warriors were up 2 or the Warriors were up 3 or maybe the Warriors were even up 5 and you think, oh man, they got the ball. Here comes Steph for 3. He's going to put this game out of reach. And he didn't make it. That kept happening time and time again. It happened so much it got to the point where I'm watching the game going, Toronto, he's not going to keep missing. Like at some point, if you allow them to stick around, that shot's going to fall. Or if you don't convert on the other end to cut this lead a little bit, that shot's going to fall. There was a point there in the fourth quarter where Kawhi Leonard completely took over. Kawhi was having a very average, but in fact, Kawhi Leonard was having a very below average game, and it fit very nicely with the rest of the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors did not play well yesterday, and neither did the Golden State Warriors. In terms of play, it reminded me a lot of Game 7 of the 2016 NBA Finals, the Cavs-Warriors Game 7, where the Cavs won. Remember that stretch in the final 3-4 minutes? No one could make a shot. There was a point where I think it was Klay Thompson took a shot, and you could almost see him praying that the ball goes in. Both teams were super tight, and I feel like the Toronto Raptors played tight the entire game with the exception of that fourth quarter stretch by Kawhi Leonard where he just took over, and it felt like, okay, Kawhi is doing something major here. And that's where Nick Nurse executed his worst decision of the season. He called timeout to slow. He said his guys needed rest, but all the momentum was on their side. He basically iced his own team as coming out of that timeout, the Warriors hit back-to-back three-pointers. Everything was going in the direction of the Toronto Raptors. All of the momentum was behind the Toronto Raptors. All of the momentum was behind Canada at that moment. And for some reason, Nick Nurse felt his guys needed rest, and he knows his team better than I do. But as a fan, I'm watching that going, man, he just really slowed the pace of the game down. And at that point, even if the Raptors are running, even if the Raptors are exhausted, you've got a 5-point lead. You're a couple of minutes away from your first ever NBA championship. Are you feeling fatigue in that moment? I don't know. I've never been in that moment. As a fan, I would just argue, I'm going to guess that they're not. I'm going to argue that fatigue is not a factor in that equation. Now, on the other side of that, if you don't call timeout on the offensive end, you come down, Steph Curry hits a 3, maybe you call timeout there. But they called timeout while they were in the midst of their one. The Golden State Warriors couldn't hit anything. They were still very much in the process of that ball not going down. Draymond couldn't get anything to fall. Klay, Steph, Iggy wasn't even taking shots. They couldn't get nothing to happen for him. And then coming out of that timeout, Klay, Steph, back-to-back threes. Suddenly, we've got a tie game. They were down 6 with, 3 minutes left. And under 3 minutes left, and they outscored the Toronto Raptors 9-2. The remainder of the game, all of those points were scored by Steph and Klay, which is a running theme, actually, for the way that the game went. Steph and Klay were absolutely extraordinary last night. Tremendous performance from both of those guys, and we'll continue to talk about that. We'll continue to talk about what those guys did. 12 of the Warriors' 23-pointers came from Steph and Klay. Those guys stepped up big. In the emergence, Kevin Durant plays 12 minutes, and there's this very not so subtle reminder how great Kevin Durant is. He was in every sense of the word, flawless when he was out there on the floor for the Golden State Warriors. It was a reminder to everyone how great the Warriors are when Kevin Durant is on the floor. It was a reminder to everyone who may have forgotten that, or may have never have known, that Kevin Durant is one of the best players, if not the best player, on the planet Earth. And he was doing all this incredibly hobbled. We asked yesterday, Kevin Durant's going to come back and play tonight. Okay, what version of Kevin Durant? Have we ever seen this version of Kevin Durant that's going to play before? Because there were reports coming out of, Kevin Durant practiced today over the weekend. Oh, Kevin Durant practiced today. Okay, good. And then the reports started coming out. Yeah, it wasn't a good practice. He did not look good. He looked extremely limited. No one was happy with the way practice ran. It's like, oh, okay. But Steve Kerr says he's going to be a game-time decision. I think it was about an hour after Steve Kerr said he was going to be a game-time decision. Kevin Durant was telling everybody, I'm playing. And then well over an hour before tip, we hear Kevin Durant's, he's playing. He's playing in Game 5. I think after the Warriors went down 3-1, I think after we heard that Kevin Durant was practicing, we knew that he was going to play in Game 5. We knew he was going to play in this potential series-ending game for the Golden State Warriors. And we'll get, there's a lot to discuss with Kevin Durant. We're going to get to more of that as the day rolls along. For those unaware, he had 11 points, 3 of 3 shooting, 3 of 3 on 3-point field goals in the 12 minutes that he played. That's how impactful he was last night. 31 points for Steph. That is his 10th career 30-point game in the NBA Finals. That's amazing. Klay Thompson, 7 3-pointers yesterday. Fourth time that both of them have hit 5 3-pointers in the same NBA Finals game as teammates. No other duo in the history of the NBA has done it more than once. Kawhi Leonard, we mentioned his what felt like a pedestrian game until a stretch in the fourth quarter where he scored or assisted on 14 straight points, 26 points total for Kawhi Leonard, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. That sounds like an extraordinary game. I'm sure if you watched it, you know that it very much was not. He had an extraordinary stretch in the fourth quarter, but it was a rough go there for Kawhi Leonard, and it was a rough go for the Toronto Raptors overall. Everything that had gotten the Toronto Raptors to this point was not clicking for them last night until that middle portion of the fourth quarter. This was a weird game, man. This was a game where I felt like the Warriors weren't playing well enough to put them away, and the Raptors weren't playing well enough to beat them. It was a game that was completely overshadowed by Kevin Durant's injury. And it didn't even feel like on that final possession from the Toronto Raptors that they actually had a chance to win the NBA Finals. I don't know if it was because the crowd was nervous. I don't know if it was because the play was taking a long time to develop. But there was very little, if any, reaction from the crowd there on that final play. Maybe they were trying to be quiet so the guys could run the play. And somehow the ball ends up in Kyle Lowry's hands. Oh, that's so awful. Kyle Lowry, God bless him, he did everything wrong in the final 3 minutes. Like his decision-making was bad. His shot selection, everything he did was wrong. He got bailed out on a driving layup on a DeMarcus Cousins goaltending call, which was a legit call. It was a goaltending call for sure. But he had the play right before that where he threw it into the backcourt. And I guess this shot that he took last night at the end of regulation was tipped or it was blocked by Draymond Green. Kawhi Leonard had the ball in his hands. Kawhi Leonard, in those crunch time situations, in those go-ahead attempts, Kawhi Leonard shoots 45.8%. Kyle Lowry, go-ahead attempts in his career, including yesterday, he's 2 of 30. That's 6.7%. Kawhi Leonard, 2 of 30 on go-ahead field goal attempts in the final 20 seconds. 6.7% versus 45.8%. Is there a non-Warriors fan in the world who wanted anyone but Kawhi Leonard to shoot that ball? We saw the shot Kawhi Leonard hit against Philadelphia. The degree of difficulty on that shot was absolutely insane. Nobody should have taken that shot except for him. I understand trying to make a play. I understand trying to make the right basketball play. That shot doesn't get blocked. Look at the arc on the shot. Of all the impressive things out of Kawhi Leonard's game-winning shot against Philadelphia, look at the arc on it. Look how high he gets that shot to get over Joel Embiid's hands. That ball's not getting blocked by Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, or anybody else if Kawhi Leonard is shooting it. And of course, this is Tuesday morning quarterback. This is, armchair coach here. But if you have a chance to do it all over again, I don't think Kawhi Leonard is passing that ball. And maybe he's going to get the opportunity to do it again headed into Thursday. And I don't know who has the momentum headed into Thursday night's game. You could argue that the Warriors are rejuvenated, and I do believe there is something to this. This has nothing to do with Kevin Durant as a player, but we've talked about this in the past. There is a very definitive difference between a player being injured, ruled out, and beyond a shadow of a doubt that player is not coming back, versus, he's on a game-to-game situation. He's not going to play in game 1. Okay, here's game 2. He's not going to play in game 2. Okay, here's game 3. He's not going to play in game 3. We had just heard yesterday, there were reports coming out of the great reporters over at The Athletic that there were people within the Golden State Warriors organization that were confused by Kevin Durant's availability. They thought he was going to be able to play significantly sooner than he actually did. All of that is going to be eliminated. Whether that was a focus of the Golden State Warriors, whether that was even in the mind of the Golden State Warriors, who knows? They haven't won a game yet, by the way, at Oracle in this series. They're 0 for 2 so far. It's incredible to think that the Warriors might be 0 for 3 with the Raptors celebrating on their home court come Thursday. And we'll save our predictions for Thursday. But I don't know who... Obviously, you think the team that won the last game is the one that has all of the momentum, and they're carrying it into the next game. It's possible. That's certainly possible. You also have the Toronto Raptors, who are going into an arena that, hey, we've won twice. There was a quote coming out of yesterday heading into Game 5 that Nick Nurse had said, all right, guys, let's go in here. Let's split this series. Let's get one of these. Let's make sure we get one of these. And Kawhi Leonard said, F that, let's get them both. And they were able to do that. So Steph running around yelling, we're going home. Well, they are, but you haven't won there yet. You haven't won there yet in this series. So if Oracle is an arena to be feared, I don't think Toronto fears it. And you know how that Oracle crowd is. And if you don't know how I feel about that Oracle crowd, they're going to be tight. If that game's close, if we have a game like we did last night, that crowd's not going to be loud. They're not going to lift the Golden State Warriors. They're going to be tight. I think the Toronto Raptors crowd was tight last night. As much has been made, is there a viable situation where you could believe the Raptors are under less pressure heading into Game 6? The NBA championship is still very much on the line. But how tight were they knowing, man, we're at home, we're in Canada. This isn't the NHL. The NHL has a slew of hockey teams, right? Like if Toronto wins, if the Toronto Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup, Canada isn't celebrating because there's Edmonton, there's Vancouver, there's hockey teams all over Canada. But the Raptors, that's Canada's team. Like the entire country is going to celebrate. Was there more pressure on them because they were at home, because the arena was full, because Jurassic Park was packed, because the entire country was ready to celebrate their first NBA championship? Could they walk into a situation on Thursday night where they're significantly more relaxed? I don't have a definitive answer to that. I'm just looking at human nature. Just looking at human behavior. You're in front of your home crowd. Your home crowd is tight at that point Because really, the Warriors were leading the whole way. We had our first fourth quarter lead change yesterday. 5 games into the series, we had our first fourth quarter lead change. Amazing stat coming out of last night's game. So what type of pressure do the Toronto Raptors take into Game 6? Because I'd argue that the Golden State Warriors, all the pressure's off of them now. They went through the worst case scenario with their best player. He came back from an injury, and we're gonna discuss Kevin Durant in depth here in just a couple of minutes. But he came back, got re-injured. He's not playing in Game 6. He's not playing in Game 7. He may or may not play for the Golden State Warriors again, which I think that's another conversation to be had. Maybe now's not the appropriate time, but I think that's a conversation to be had. Because the story coming out of last night's game isn't Kevin Durant. If Kevin Durant hadn't been hurt to the extent in which he was, there are a lot of people going to question why Kevin Durant was on the floor following that injury. And maybe that's hindsight, and maybe I'm guilty of it. But if we get word, okay, Kevin Durant re-aggravated his calf, he's out for the remainder of the series. They can't afford to put him back out there. He's risking his long-term health. If that's the prognosis, and we got that prognosis last night during the game, if we got a Doris Burke report that said KD re-aggravated his calf, he's obviously not playing the rest of the night. Find out from Steve Kerr, Bob Myers, or whoever after the game, hey, we put him out there. He gave it a go. It's not ready. We can't put him back out there. We're taking the step right now of ruling him out for the remainder of the series. We just can't put him out there and risk further injury. Okay, if that happens, if that had happened, are we talking more about the performance of DeMarcus Cousins last night? Now, he damn near destroyed that entire performance with that offensive foul call with 15 seconds left that actually gave the Toronto Raptors a chance to win the game on the final possession on that horrible Kyle Lowry shot. But DeMarcus Cousins, for the second time this series, was a major, major factor in the Golden State Warriors winning a basketball game. Nope, he's not the Olympian DeMarcus Cousins. Nope, he's not the multi-time All-Star DeMarcus Cousins. But he has had impactful moments in this series that have led to the Warriors winning both of their games. I know Iggy hit the shot at the end of Game 2. That shot doesn't matter if DeMarcus Cousins doesn't make the plays that he does in Game number 2. You talk about impact. DeMarcus Cousins, I think, this was asked last night. I didn't get Steve Kerr's entire response, but the question was, it looked like DeMarcus Cousins was out of the rotation. He was on that DMP CD. And then Kevin Durant goes down, and he comes in and is immediately impactful. He immediately makes a difference for that team. He was 6 of 8 from the field. By far his best game since game number 2. By far his best game shooting. But he helped put the Warriors in position in a moment where they have to be just deflated. Like, you saw the emotion pouring out of Steph Curry, who acknowledged, I got a lot of emotions running through me right now. You saw the emotion pour out of Steph Curry in his interview with Doris Burke after the game. In a moment where the Golden State Warriors are at their most vulnerable because they saw what just happened to Kevin Durant, you saw Andre Iguodala and Steph Curry both take Kevin Durant off the court. And by the way, can we end this narrative now about what type of teammate Kevin Durant is following last night's game? Because we still hold on to the situation with Draymond Green and Kevin Durant. We still are looking at his impending free agency in July, and we expect whatever decision he was going to make on July 1st as some sort of indictment. I guess it's June 30th now, sorry. We look at whatever decision he was going to make on June 30th now as an indictment of his relationship with his teammates. Well, I don't know what kind of teammate Kevin Durant is. Oh, I don't think Warriors fans have really embraced Kevin Durant. Can we put an end to all of that now? After seeing what he risked last night to keep the Warriors season alive. After seeing the reaction from Klay Thompson and Steph Curry and Steve Kerr and Bob Myers and Draymond Green and DeMarcus Cousins and all of those guys, can we put an end to that? Because, and I'm using the collective we because I never bought into that. But can we collectively end that narrative and move on to something else? He risked his immediate future for the Golden State Warriors last night. And it did not pay off for him. It paid off for the Warriors because when he was in, they were unstoppable. There was an immediate visual of, oh, look, he's that good. Oh, look, he is the best player on the planet. Oh, look how different this already very, very good team is with Kevin Durant on the floor. We gave you the stat yesterday. I believe the record is now up to 9-1 when Kevin Durant plays in an NBA Finals game for the Golden State Warriors. They are 9-1 versus 8-9 when he doesn't. Raptors lost consecutive home games for the first time this postseason. And as much credit as the Golden State Warriors deserve the Toronto Raptors, they deserve a lot of blame as well. They had an opportunity to put this game away, and they very, very much did not capitalize on it. They had an opportunity to win their first ever NBA championship because the Warriors could not get anything to fall. They scored three-pointers in bunches late. I sent a text message to someone yesterday. I don't know if I'm more concerned by the fact that the Toronto Raptors can't hit a three or by the fact that they can't stop a three. Both of them were equally concerning, but there was a stretch there in the fourth quarter where nothing was falling for the Golden State Warriors, and the Toronto Raptors didn't take advantage. Like, think about this. The Toronto Raptors lost by 1 point last night. 106-105. They had an opportunity to win on the final possession of the game. The Warriors hit 20 3-pointers. 20. The Raptors hit 8. They were 8 of 22. Or 8 of 32, excuse me. The Toronto Raptors were 8 of 32. They hit 8 3-pointers while the Golden State Warriors hit 20. In a discrepancy like that, normally you're seeing the Warriors win by 25-30. But the Warriors hit those 3-pointers in bunches. They hit them in the first quarter, kind of the start of the second quarter. The Raptors closed things up a little bit, and then they had that barrage there in the final 3 minutes or so of that game that wound up giving them the win. Text line was buzzing last night. As I've told you many times, it's a 24/7 text line. It's the direct link. To me, it is a direct link to the podcast, and you can text at any time, day or night, 916-888-5898. That's 916-888-5898. You can also connect with me across all social media platforms, at Damian Barling on Twitter, at Damian Barling on Instagram, and Damian Barling on Facebook as well. For those who have been with the podcast through the first 6 episodes of the show, I greatly, greatly appreciate you. You may have noticed we posted the show a little bit early today. I was so eager to get in and to talk about the game last night. I just couldn't wait for the launch time at noon. You might still be listening at noon, but we posted this podcast significantly earlier in the morning just because I honestly couldn't wait. I was so anxious to get in here. There were so many texts coming in last night. There were so many tweets coming in last night. I was so excited to get in here and to talk about last night's game and last night's situation. And, Bob Myers took to the podium last night, which was concern number one because Bob Myers normally doesn't go to the podium. Steve Kerr deflecting all questions about Kevin Durant to Bob Myers' appearance later on in the podium was all very, very concerning because you just felt like he was going to announce the worst. He said that Kevin Durant, well, here's a little bit of Bob Myers last night.
Kevin Durant loves to play basketball, and the people that questioned whether he wanted to get back to this team were wrong. He's one of the most misunderstood people. He's a good teammate. He's a good person. It's not fair. I'm lucky to know him.
You obviously hear the emotion from Bob Myers right there in that moment, and he was fighting back tears the entire time he was sitting on the podium. He was fighting back tears when he said that Kevin Durant has an Achilles injury. There's only one Achilles injury that gets anybody's attention. He knew, as we learned later, and I'm sure will be confirmed with the MRI later on or sometime today. He knew that Kevin Durant's Achilles was torn. He knew that Kevin Durant may have played his last game with the Golden State Warriors. And obviously he was very emotional about that. He went on to say, if you want to blame somebody, blame me. And I admire Bob Myers for sitting up there in that moment and taking the bullets, because a lot of people had a lot of questions, including me. And Bob Myers is right to a certain degree. We are looking for someone to blame because we know the outcome. Because through 12 minutes, Kevin Durant was nothing short of a hero. He had come back from a calf strain. For people who don't, really, understand the body, I spent a lot of time studying sports kinesiology and things like that. And it's not that hard to figure out. You're taught the song when you're, a kid, knee bone connected to the something bone connected to the something bone, where the same holds true for tendons, muscles, all of those different things. The calf is a direct link to the tendon. And oftentimes an Achilles tear begins with either a calf injury or some sort of overcompensation because of an injury existing on the other leg. So you're putting too much pressure on it. You're putting too much stress on it. The calf is made up of three different muscles that connect down there to the tendon. If one of them is tight, it could cause the Achilles to pop. So Kevin Durant stepping on the floor last night with what we were told was a calf strain was directly going to have an impact on his Achilles. Again, I understand this is all hindsight. It's all easy to sit up here and say this now because we know the end result. And I get that I'm guilty of that. But I'll ask you this question. If we're headed into the Christmas Day game against the Los Angeles Lakers, the Golden State Warriors, Los Angeles Lakers on Christmas Day, we're dealing with the same situation from Kevin Durant. Is Kevin Durant playing? Same injury, same timeline. We'll say he gets hurt at the very beginning of the season. He's been out a little bit over a month. Does he play Christmas Day? Does he play if this injury occurs in January or February or even in March? Or was Kevin Durant only cleared to play because it was an NBA Finals game? And the question I asked was Kevin Durant cleared to play in a basketball game, or was Kevin Durant cleared to play in an NBA Finals game? Because I believe that those two questions get two different answers. He was cleared to play in an NBA Finals game. And everyone's going to say, well, Kevin Durant, it was a collective decision. But that's part of the problem. It shouldn't be. This isn't a collective decision. Or at least it shouldn't be a collective decision. It is up to the doctors. Is he cleared to play? Can he play? Yes or no? Then you get feedback from the athlete. Well, he can play, but he's going to be in a lot of pain. This is like Kevon Looney, who, by the way, was re-injured last night. He can play. He can get a shot to play, which is what happened with Kevon Looney. But he's probably going to be in a lot of discomfort, and there's going to be a significant risk of re-injuring his injured area, whether it's his calf or worse. There's that. But remember, Kevin Durant didn't practice until Sunday. And even the reports coming out of Sunday's practice were, okay, Kevin Durant's cleared to practice. Great. Kevin Durant got out there and practiced. Great. Oh, Kevin Durant's practice wasn't very good. He didn't do a lot of work with the team. They didn't like what they saw. But Steve Kerr is going to make it a game time decision. So the fact that he could move, is that what cleared him to play? The fact that he could do his pregame dance in the tunnel with his teammates, that cleared him to play? Like, what exactly cleared him to play? Bob Myers says it was a collective effort. Put the blame on me. I'm the head of basketball operations. No. I want to hear from the doctors. I want to hear from the trainers. I want to hear from the people who said, he's good to go. He was cleared to play. The Golden State Warriors right now are bordering on NFL status, where you could have a guy being unconscious and being picked up by his offensive lineman, and their dopey coach standing on the sideline going, I didn't see anything. I didn't know he was concussed. I didn't know he was knocked out on his feet. Shout out to Jeff Fisher there. Now, come on. The NBA is just bordering on this gross status right here where they're clearing guys to play because it's the NBA Finals. How the hell did Kevon Looney get back out there? He's got a fracture near his collarbone. That dude's got to be screaming in pain every time that shot wears off. Are you kidding me? And again, I know I'm being hypocritical. I know this is easy in hindsight. But how the hell was Kevin Durant cleared to play last night? And how guilty is Kevin Durant's team of people? I heard Jay Williams say this morning, well, the people surrounding Kevin Durant, they were really pushing for a Game 5 return. They were really pushing to get him out there back on the floor. Like, why? Like, what did Kevin Durant have to gain by being out there on the floor last night? He's a 2-time NBA Finals MVP. He is the best player on the best team of the last 5 years. He is the reason that team has multiple NBA championships over the course of the last couple of years. He is an NBA MVP. What does he have to gain by being out there? What, just to remind everybody how great he is? Who was pushing for his return? I understand, and this is why athletes shouldn't have a say in this, because I understand how competitive all athletes are. That's why you don't consult with an athlete and ask them if they can play. Hey, how do you feel? You want to give this a go? They're always going to say yes. His foot could be turned in the opposite direction. And he'd say, yeah, I want to get out there and play. You have Gordon Hayward coming off of that gross injury that happened to him at the beginning of the season a couple of years ago. His foot turned the wrong direction. That's an NBA Finals game. You ask him right there in that moment, oh, just tape it up. I think I can go play. Now, we'll deal with the fact that it's facing the wrong direction later. All athletes are going to say that. All athletes are going to say that they can go out there and play. You know why? Because the one time you don't, guess what happens to you? There is one guy right now off the top of my head, and I'm sure you can think of more, and you can text those to me at 916-888-5898. There is one athlete that I can think of that willingly took himself out of a game saying, something is wrong. I don't like the way something is off here. It was Alex Smith. Alex Smith, after taking himself out because he believed he had a head injury, he knew something was off. He felt he was concussed. And because the doctors didn't do their job, he called their attention to it, saying, hey, something's wrong. I don't feel right. Colin Kaepernick went in, and Alex Smith never got his starting job with the San Francisco 49ers back. But that's what athletes do. Most athletes say, oh, I'm fine. Let me go out there. Tape it up. Put some tussin on it. As Chris Rock used to say. So was Kevin Durant partially at fault? I guess you could partially blame Kevin Durant and his team of people that were pushing him out there. But there's supposed to be a line of defense when it comes to this stuff. And that line of defense is the doctors. Which is why I've said for years, I've said as long as I've had a radio show, you never trust a team physician, ever. It doesn't mean they're always shady, and I'm not insinuating that every team physician on every professional sports team is shady. I'm just saying the interest of a team doctor is the team. The interest of a team doctor is the people who sign their paycheck. It's the team. It's not the player. I've witnessed this type of nonsense firsthand. I've seen trainers try to push players out there on the court who aren't ready to play because the game was important, because it was a big game, because it was important to the standings. It was important for the playoffs. I've seen that. We've all seen it. We can all recognize it now. In the world of 24/7 sports, in the world of 24/7 news, stuff isn't kept as much of a secret as it used to be. We see everything happening in front of us. So there's a lot of blame to go around for what happened to Kevin Durant last night. You want to blame Kevin Durant for some of it? That's fine. But there's supposed to be a line of defense that prevents things like that from happening. If a player says, no, I'm coming back. No, I'm ready to play. Bob Myers says it was a collaborative effort. It was a collaborative decision. It shouldn't have been. Remember, it was just a few days ago that Steve Kerr said, well, it is up to the trainers to clear him, and the fact is he hasn't been cleared yet. Suddenly they go down 3-1 and everyone's staring at them. Like, hey, y'all going to clear KD? If the Warriors are up 3-1, is Kevin Durant playing last night? If the Warriors had an opportunity to close out in Toronto last night, was Kevin Durant on the floor? These are questions that shouldn't be asked. It should be universal. You can either play or you can't. Well, you can play because we're down 3-1. No. Well, you can't play because we're up 3-1. Well, we don't really need you. Well, we're just gonna hold off and conserve you here. We want to save you just in case. No, man, that's not how it works. Yes or no? I misspoke. That's exactly how it works. What I should have said is that's not how it's supposed to work. There's no shades of gray. You're either cleared or you're not. It's black or it's white. But we create all our own shades of gray. Doctors do it. Bob Myers does it. Steve Kerr does it. The Golden State Warriors do it. The fans do it. Well, Kevon Looney came back with a fracture in his collarbone. Why isn't Kevin Durant back? That's what we talked about yesterday. A calf strain doesn't sound bad. Fracture near the collarbone sounds awful. Sounds terrible. A strained calf, dude, it doesn't even sound bad. Get a foam roller. Work it out. You'll be fine. But that's the way fans think. And then we buy into it. And then reporters start asking questions. And then players start asking questions. Read the quote from Sam Amick yesterday. Kevin Durant's lack of return has created some angst and confusion. Really? Well, is that angst and confusion gone now that Kevin Durant's entire 2019-20 campaign was just erased? Or all the angst that the Golden State Warriors players were feeling, is that gone now? And I also wonder, who was that angst and confusion coming from? Was it coming from, and please forgive me, this isn't a knock. He's a professional basketball player. He's significantly better at it than I'll ever be. Was it coming from, Quinn Cook? Or was it coming from, who got a guy who got a DNP last night? Was it coming from Jonas Jerebko or Jordan Bell? With all due respect to those guys, because it certainly didn't look like it was coming from Klay Thompson or Steph Curry. Maybe it was coming from Draymond or DeMarcus. I can't imagine it coming from DeMarcus, given the injuries that he's been attempting to recover from. So where was this angst and confusion coming from? And what stress was put on Kevin Durant leading into the game last night? Was it just the simple 3-1 number? We're down 3-1. I got to help my team win. This is why I signed here. I signed here to be the best basketball player in the world. I got to help this team win the championship. We're down 3-1. We know we can beat Toronto. I'm coming back. Does he just get on? Does he just get out on the floor and stumble his way through a practice? Cameras on him pregame, so he does his dance. Everybody gets hyped. He motivated that team. There's no question about that. Anyone who watched the 12 minutes that Kevin Durant was in the game, there all questions about his impact for the Golden State Warriors and his impact on the series were completely eliminated. Everyone who said if the Golden State Warriors were healthy for an entire series, that the Toronto Raptors would be eliminated in 4 or 5, they all felt validated last night because we saw 12 minutes of the most brilliant basketball player on the planet. And now we have to wonder if we're ever going to see that basketball player again. I don't think we're at the state medically where a player who tears his Achilles never comes back the same. People point to Kobe Bryant, and you have to remind them Kobe Bryant was already in the latter stages of his career. I don't think Kevin Durant is not there yet. And now there's so many questions about free agency. What happens now in free agency? Does Kevin Durant, because I don't think any team hesitates to sign him to a multi-year max money deal because he tore his Achilles. I don't. I think New York comes to him and says, hey, we understand, what happened. We understand you're going to miss the entire season. That's fine with us. Here's 4 years, 180 or 190 or whatever the maximum amount of money we can give you is. Here you go. All yours, buddy. You take next year. You get healthy. We've got the best medical staff here in New York. We've got the best doctors here in New York. Brooklyn's going to make the same pitch, in my estimation. Hell, maybe the Sacramento Kings can now slide in. Hey, Kevin Durant, we got the best doctors in the world here in the city of Sacramento. I don't know. Every team now who talking to Kevin Durant is going to pitch their doctors. Or is it a bit simpler? Kevin Durant has a player option for $31.5. Does he opt in, get paid $31.5 million to rehab with the Golden State Warriors, still around the best team in all the basketball, and sign with a new team next year? These are all conversations that have been had with Kevin Durant and his team throughout the night. There's no way that they haven't. Absolutely no way. This was the most anticipated free agency class since 2010, and Kevin Durant was the head of it. Kevin Durant was the ultimate domino. And now once the NBA Finals is up, some people are going to start doing it today because we've got a couple of days before Game 6, so we've got to fill time and we've got to create conversation. How does Kevin Durant's injury affect Kyrie Irving? How does it affect the rest of the NBA free agency class? What if the Toronto Raptors blow this 3-1 lead? Does Kawhi skip town? Does Kawhi go to Los Angeles? What if the Toronto Raptors win? Does Kawhi Leonard stay in Los Angeles? Or does Kawhi Leonard stay in Toronto? All of these are post-mortem questions that are going to be had over the course of the next couple of days, because now there's nervousness. Like, oh man, can you imagine? We might see we went all of these years without seeing a 3-1 comeback, a 3-1 lead comeback, and now we might be on the verge of seeing two within a 4-year span. 3-4 year span. Kai has another question. Why was Kevin Durant bringing the ball up the floor? I know that's like minuscule, but when you're bringing the ball up the floor, it's up to you to create, which means you're probably doing a lot more cutting. You're probably doing a lot more quick burst movements than you would be if you're running off a screen. Kevin Durant brought the ball up the floor twice. And the last one was the play in which he apparently tore his Achilles. Now, again, I know that's petty, but why would you put him in that position? Even if you're looking just from an energy standpoint, this is a guy who hasn't played since May 8th. Why make him be the creator of the play when you got so many other creators out there on the floor? Draymond Green is a creator. Why did Kevin Durant have the ball in this situation? Why was he bringing the ball up the floor in this situation? The most consecutive games that Kevin Durant has missed in his career was 28. It was back in the 2014-15 season when he suffered a toe injury. He also missed 19 games in the 2016-17 campaign with a hyperextended knee. As we mentioned just a moment ago, Durant has a $31.5 million player option next season. He was expected to decline that that player option and become a free agent. Now I think all bets are off the table. If Durant re-signs with the Warriors on a max deal, listen to these numbers here really quick. If Durant re-signs with the Golden State Warriors on a max deal, he will make $221.3 million over the course of the next 5 years. If he decides to sign somewhere else, that team, whether it's Brooklyn or New York or anyone else, they can offer him 4 years, $164 million. So that is a massive pay difference. That is a $60 million pay difference for Kevin Durant to stay with the Golden State Warriors and for him to sign with another team. How does this injury affect his decision on that player option? Does he take the player option and hang around the Golden State Warriors next year? Does he opt out and still re-sign with the Golden State Warriors? I heard a crazy number. Here it is. If the Golden State Warriors sign all their guys to long-term extensions, because remember, Klay Thompson is a factor here. Draymond Green will be next season. If they're able to lock them up on long-term extensions over the course of the next 4 or 5 years, the Golden State Warriors will pay $1.5 billion in salary and luxury tax over that time frame, and that time frame being 4 to 5 years. And the other question is, does this injury, does Kevin Durant's injury make him more likely to stay in Golden State? And the market didn't shrink. Like, with all due respect to DeMarcus Cousins, he's not that. The level of player that they are, extremely different. The type of player that they are, extremely different. The perception of each of those players is very, very different. DeMarcus Cousins is a bigger dude, carries more weight. I mean, does anyone think Kevin Durant won't be able to come back from this injury? Achilles is the kiss of death in sports, but I think that's an antiquated thought. I don't think it's the kiss of death. But we look at the high level in which Kevin Durant played, and we still equate Achilles injuries, to when guys, in the past suffered them. Or we try to point to Kobe Bryant as the most recent. Well, look what happened to Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant was already on the downswing of his career. Then he got injured again. And maybe that's a concern. Maybe that's a concern if you're the Golden State Warriors, and maybe that's a concern if you're any of the other teams out there. How does this injury affect potential other injuries moving forward? Is he now less durable? Is he now damaged goods? Again, there was a lot of emotion coming out of last night's game. Here's Steph Curry.
Being at Oracle Arena one more time where our fans can really get behind us. We're going to have to will ourselves, for another 48 minutes to stay alive, and whatever it's going to take from every single guy in our jersey. So I don't know really if there's going to be a speech in the locker room, if there's going to need to be words at all. We understand the moment, and I think we can rally.
Honestly, I just told the team I didn't know what to say because, on the one hand, I'm so proud of them, the amazing heart and grit that they showed. And on the other, I'm just devastated for Kevin. It's a bizarre feeling that we all have right now. An incredible win and a horrible loss at the same time.
Steph Curry followed by Steve Kerr right there with Steve Kerr's thoughts on Kevin Durant. So there we have it. Game 5 is in the books. The Golden State Warriors stay alive if they're going to win their third straight NBA championship. They're going to have to do it without the services of Kevin Durant. I'm sure by the time that you are listening to this or at some point throughout today, it'll be announced that Kevin Durant has a torn Achilles tendon. That will take him out for basically the entire next year, if not all of next year. And what happens in just about 3 weeks from now will be a constant storyline over the next few days. What will Kevin Durant do with his player option? And how will teams approach the signing of Kevin Durant as we move forward? 916-888-5898. That is our 24/7 text line. If you're enjoying the show, please help spread the word. Tell your friends about it. It's a live daily sports talk show that posts every single day, no later than 12 p.m. Subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't yet. Never miss an episode, regardless of the platform you're listening on, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or if you're watching the stream over there on YouTube. And let me know what you think about the podcast as well. Again, subscribe, rate, and review. If you want to shoot me an email, you could do that. DamianBarling@me.com. There is no question that the conversation today in the world of sports will center around Kevin Durant, the handling of his injury, and the future of one of the best basketball players in all of the world. There's a couple of other sports notes that I do want to touch on before we get out of here. One of them is Tony Parker. We mentioned yesterday that he's retired. He announced his retirement after 18 seasons in the NBA. Of course, 17 of those came with the San Antonio Spurs. Tony Parker made the playoffs. This is just a credit to the machine that is the San Antonio Spurs, and it's a huge credit to Greg Popovich, and not to, undervalue what Tony Parker did, but the fact that he played 17 seasons with the San Antonio Spurs and they went to the playoffs every single time is just absolutely incredible. And I really think I undersold how great Tony Parker was yesterday. 6 All-Star selections, which we mentioned. 4-time All-NBA player, 4-time NBA champion. He was the NBA Finals MVP in 2007. He has tremendous accomplishments over there in the Euro League as well. They have the most, since Parker was drafted by the Spurs In the first round of the 2001 NBA draft, the Spurs have the most regular season wins, the most postseason wins, and the most NBA Finals wins. Absolutely amazing. Again, this all just magnifies how great the San Antonio Spurs were during that time. This dude is going to make the Hall of Fame for sure. His accomplishments are so strong, both in the NBA and internationally as well. Parker, Duncan, and Ginobili all retired now. They won 4 NBA titles together as teammates. According to Elias, they are the first set of 3 or more teammates to win 4 titles together since Magic, Kareem, Michael Cooper, and Kurt Rambis did it in the 80s with the Los Angeles Lakers. Another update here on a story we talked about yesterday. David Ortiz, he is back in the United States. He is back in Boston. He landed in Boston last night. The Red Sox flew a plane out there to get him. I guess, they said he was going to be in intensive care for 24 hours. Apparently, they felt comfortable enough to send him on a plane and get some care and head back to the United States. Ortiz was then taken by ambulance with a police escort to Massachusetts General Hospital, where he will continue to receive treatment. So coming off the heels of Kevin Durant's injury last night, coming off the heels of Game 5 of the NBA Finals, today, on this day in sports, June 11th, 1993, Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley each scored 42 points in the NBA Finals, becoming the first pair of opposing players to each score 40 points. That's a fun little Michael Jordan nugget. However, with Kevin Durant's really heroic return, even if it was only for 12 minutes last night, today in 1997 was the famous flu game. Of course, Michael Jordan, diagnosed with the flu, goes on to score 17 points in the second quarter, 15 points in the fourth quarter, finished with 38, and the Bulls went on to beat the Utah Jazz 90-88, and Jordan hits the go-ahead 3 there in the final minutes, collapses into Scottie Pippen's arms, and that is forever dubbed the flu game. I know everyone has an opinion on what happened last night. I would love to hear your thoughts regarding Kevin Durant, regarding the Golden State Warriors, and regarding whether you think the Toronto Raptors still have a chance to win the NBA Finals. I'm still of the belief that they're going to go into Oracle with a whole lot less pressure than they went into the game last night. I think there was a lot more pressure on them, and you could see it. They were playing tight. You saw it from the jump, and that combined with the fact that it felt like the Warriors couldn't miss to start the game. Like, they hit 23-pointers yesterday, and it felt like a bulk of those came in the first quarter, and a whole bunch of them came in the final minutes. Now, granted, it was only, I think it was 3 in the final minutes. But that 3, that's what they needed. That's all they needed. The Warriors were down 6 points with under 3 minutes to go. And all of the momentum was on the side of the Toronto Raptors. And then Nick Nurse called that timeout. And I know that's too simplistic to say, but that really did slow down the run. Imagine being, the Kansas City Chiefs. Imagine being Patrick Mahomes and you're in a 2-minute drill and you've got the defense on their heels and you get the ball within the 5-yard line and then you call timeout. And you give the defense a break. And then suddenly the defense is able to make some stops. Like that's what this felt like. It felt like Nick Nurse slowed down his own hurry-up offense. Kawhi Leonard was doing everything right. And I still make the argument, having never been in that situation before, I still make the argument that in those moments when you have everything going your way, you're not feeling fatigue. Now, Nick Nurse certainly knows his team a whole lot better than I do. Maybe he saw something in Kawhi. Maybe he saw something in Kyle Lowry or Pascal Siakam. Maybe he wanted to get someone in the game. Maybe he saw something that said, I've got to call a timeout right here. I got to give my guys a breather. I just can't imagine in that situation where everything is going your way, they have an opportunity to go up even more. They have an opportunity to put the Golden State Warriors away for good. And they don't. And that's a mistake Nick Nurse is going to own until the Toronto Raptors win another game. And if the Toronto Raptors don't win another game this season, that is a timeout that he's going to be thinking about all through the offseason. And it's a shame because it's going to overshadow the brilliant season he has had as the head coach of the Toronto Raptors. Again, send your thoughts over there on Facebook, Twitter, or on our 24/7 text line, 916-888-5898. Send your thoughts here. I appreciate you so much for downloading and for streaming. We will be back tomorrow with another episode of the podcast with Damian Barling.